Good morning, everyone. This is Rachel with Things We Wear, and today I'm going to continue my series on how to build a t-shirt tech pack. I've already started this graded spec page, and I did another video about that, which I will link to above. Now that I've done my sketch, I realized that my sketch is really more of like a set-in kind of style, and the spec page I built was more of a relaxed shoulder style. So maybe I'm going to update this and just have it reflect maybe more of a set-in style. So rather than having an across shoulder of 19, quite so boxy, 20 might be relaxed on a medium. That's a 40-inch bust. So I'm actually going to do this based on ASTM, and let me pull up my ASTM one second here. Okay, so here's ASTM. I will link to this down below if you'd like to purchase one for yourself. It's not very expensive, and it's a great way to get started if you are wanting to do, pattern making and just have a gauge of what is pretty typical for American industry standard. So let's see here. I'm just curious about, a lot of the terminology is a bit different, so it can be a little confusing. But so bust on an 8 to 10, which is what I have as my medium base size, 36 to 37, and this is women's. I'm sorry I didn't preface that. So if I had a bust of 40, that would be fairly relaxed. I could probably go to 30, I could probably go to 19 and be okay with that. So maybe that's what I'm gonna do. So 19 here, and I'll make my sweep just like an inch bigger. I'm going to do a slightly longer length. All right, now for my cross shoulder, now I'm going to do something more like 15. And across back, I'm going to keep it the same, and across front, I'm going to make it an inch smaller. Shoulder slope, I think I'll keep it at an 1.25 inches. We'll see how it turns out on my pattern. Neck width, seam to seam. This might be a little... Well, we'll see how that shape looks. We'll come back to this. The neck rib banding height, you saw my sketch that I actually made it 5/8, so I need to update that. I usually do not promote having banding any details duplicate on the construction page and on your spec page, or just in general on your tech pack. You should only have one place for information so that the less room for error. It's more likely that you'll update your construction page and forget to update your specs. So I actually would recommend just go ahead and get rid of this row. The only reason that I am, I guess, the nice thing about having the trim height in your spec page is that the pattern maker has all the information they need in one place. But that's not really true because they'd still have to look at your construction to get the hem bend backs for sleeve hem and bottom hem. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and hide this. I don't have to fully delete it, but just get rid of it here. Armhole straight, I'm not exactly sure what I want it to be, but we'll see what looks right as we're doing the pattern. Again, sleeve length, I think that's one of those things I sort of need to see. Bicep, I think I'm going to go with 6 1/4, and sleeve opening 5 7/8. And then I can add these as we go. So one of the reasons, I don't know if I've specifically spoken about this, but I really love pattern makers and tech designers to be, if they're not the same person, to be really in sync. And this is exactly why, because a lot of these specs are really closely aligned with the pattern, and sometimes when you're working on the pattern you'll realize that these specs don't make sense and that you'll need to go and update them. Like I might start working on the neck shape and realize 8 and 4.5 just isn't going to look good, and if it should be a round shape, maybe this needs to be 4 3/4, or maybe it needs to be 4. It's kind of hard to know unless you've done this style and this fabrication before, and then you can kind of derive your measurements from that. But it can be pretty difficult to know exactly in advance what things should be. So I would always recommend that even if you come up with your specs, I'm sorry, I don't know if you could hear my stomach. I keep doing this first thing in the morning when I'm hungry. Even if you've already come up with your specs and then it goes to the pattern maker, after the pattern maker does their work, come back to the specs and update anything as needed. Because the most confusing thing for a factory, and as a pattern maker who works with a lot of factories, I have this problem a lot, is when the spec page does not match the pattern. And let me tell you, that is pretty much all the time. And it slows down samples. If you have a quick turnaround time and you want that pattern back or you want that sample back quickly, then don't give your factory conflicting information. Give them a pattern that represents the spec page. And if you don't know what that spec should be, let's say I'm not really sure what the front neck drop is going to be. You could always have a column for comments, and then you can just write please see pattern, maintain shape. And so then the factory, rather than looking at this pattern and saying, oh shoot, their requested front neck drop doesn't match their pattern, so they're either going to update the pattern to match it, or they're going to go back and forth with you for a couple days. This just eliminates that issue. Just go with the pattern shape and we'll see how it looks on the body. Because as we know, a lot of it is, this is a three-pronged thing, right? It involves numbers, it involves a pattern, and then ultimately involves looking at it on a body and deciding if the numbers in the pattern represent what the vision is. So in this case, and in this video series, I'm actually going to use Clo so we can make the pattern and then fit it on a body in Clo. And I'm going to use, Clo has ASTM forms in all the sizes, so I'll use an ASTM size 8 and size 10, just so we can cross-check our work and make sure that the pattern looks good, and then we can come back to this page and update it as needed. Okay, so I'm going to delete that, just write 4, because I am the pattern maker, so I don't need to leave any comments. All right, so I think that's going to be good. Some of these specs, again, yeah, we'll come back to and see how they look. All right, so I now have my Tuca design open. If you haven't watched my other videos, I use Tuca design now primarily for my own freelance personal use. For many years, I used Gerber AccuMark. It's a lovely program, but also basically prohibitively expensive for a freelancer. So Tuca it is. I will leave links to Tuca website down below. I use the tailoring edition, I believe, and I think I spend about $200 a month on it. But of course, if you're a freelancer, you can write off that expense. So, you know, it's not nothing, but it's also doesn't keep me from taking on work, which is cool. Okay, so I don't need to do anything else. So let's see here, piece, how do I think I'm gonna pull this over here. Here we go. Here's my create new pieces thing. So I'm gonna create my front back. Let's call this front. And the length, I think I made it 25 inches from hip point shoulder. And the width is 19, so, oh yeah, so 9.5, that's perfect. Wow, it read my mind. There it is. Okay, cool. So, first things first. So this is basically me drafting out what I've written on a measurement page. I would say pattern drafting in general, a lot of people have a lot of rules, and if you've watched my channel, I would say rules are helpful for you to get to a certain point. They're good guidelines, they're good to know about, it's good to learn different perspectives, but ultimately the point is that it fits a body well, and I wouldn't over obsess with rules. Rules to me are really only a way to review a pattern and maybe to help you get started, but not really an end, a means to an end, if that makes sense. All right, so it's 25 inches long, so we did that one. Sometimes I like to just like mark when I've done a spec, so maybe I'll color it green. Yeah, that'll be good. Okay, so now that's green, and the chest, 9.5. So this could be green too. Sometimes I also will record the actual pattern measurements because sometimes, well, often, patterns might not necessarily match your requested specs at all times. The first time you're making a pattern, probably you want to start with requested specs and then adjust according to there. for whatever reason, especially with knits, they don't shrink or grow consistently. They'll grow at different seam lines, they'll shrink at other ones. So you kind of have to just go with the flow and see how that fabric reacts. But for first patterns, I usually just follow exactly and then adjust from there. Although I would say usually for first patterns, I would add like maybe 1 to 2% of shrinkage in the width. So probably here I wouldn't do 19, I would do 19 1/4 just to give it a little extra room. But in this case, we're not making a physical sample, well, we're just gonna put it in clo. So there is no reason to do that. All right, so now the bottom opening should be 20. So you know what, I use a shortcut and I realize that's a little confusing. So let's see here, let me show you what I'm gonna do here in case you're new to Tuca Tech. So these are a lot of my move point functions here, or just in general point functions. So if I want to move a point and I know that it's like in a certain direction, sometimes I'll just do this because I can type it in. So the sweep is going to be 1 inch bigger than the bust. So I'm going to put 0.5 in the Y direction. Cool. There we go. So now that's 10. That's perfect. Cool. So now I can color that one green. Done, done, done. All right, now we're in the shoulder area. Trying to decide if I want to do neck width or shoulder first. All right, we can do shoulder. So one thing I might do is just kind of give markers on things. Oops. So basically with Tuca Tech, if you press Alt as you click a point, that will bring up a dialog for you to specify the placement. So I'm going to click Alt, and this is going to be my center front. Okay, so from here out is my across shoulder. Think about add point, absolute, next. Okay. So if we want my across shoulder to be 15, on the hat that's going to be 7.5. So I actually want this to be 7.5, and you'll see it moved over here, so that gives me an idea that it's correct. What this means is the previous point, which is here, it always moves in clockwise direction. So previous point, 2 inches, next point, 7.5. So I want it to be 7.5 for my center front mark. Cool. So that is my across shoulder. And then I'm going to do my armhole, which, you know, take this with a grain of salt. It might not be perfect, but I'm just going to move it down 9 inches. Okay. And as you can see, I'm going to turn off the curve there. So you're getting that weird thing there. All right. So now I have my cross shoulder, got my armhole. Let me mark that. Across shoulder, marked. Okay, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and do our neck width. So I'm gonna, again, add a point here. And neck width, we did seam to seam and not edge to edge. So that means that I can mark out exactly on the pattern where the seam is, and I don't have to worry about the neck banding width, etc. So I'm just going to go ahead, Alt, click here, and I want my previous point that's here, so next, that's what I'm looking for. So if I'm going for 8 as a neck width, then this should be 4 because I'm working on the half. Cool. So there's my 4, and then I want to put in my front neck drop. I actually might make my front neck drop 4 because that'll make it a perfect little circle. So I'm going to update my spec page on that. Previous, let's see here, 4. Cool. Okay, so now I'm going to make this 4, and I'm going to just color those green. Cool, cool, cool. Great. And this is good, and of course, save your work. All right, so now I'm going to mirror this piece. Let's see if I can remember how to do that. Piece. It's been a little while. Lately I've been using Gerber and Optitex more, so I'm a little bit rusty, but it'll come back to me. Okay, I remember now. So first I'm going to select the mirror line, which maybe would be here. And then I'm going to select this, which is set half. Do you want to add support points? No. Okay, I think the problem is that this is a curve. Okay. Once we add the curve here, that won't be a problem. It's just being a little weird. And now I'm going to use my arc tool to create my neckline. So I'm going to select, this is the arc tool here. I'm going to select this point and then this point, and then I'm just going to kind of move it around. If you want more flexibility, press the shift button, and that'll let you sort of move it. If you don't, this will keep it exactly symmetrical. And you can either create a new internal or you can have it replace the lines. I wanted to replace the lines, so I'm not going to create a new internal point. You can control all the details here if you need to, but I'm just going to go with that. And this looks like it's a curve point, so I'm just going to remove the curve. There we go. All right, there is my neckline. Cool, cool, cool. All right, so now we have our neck shape. Let's do the shoulder slope, 1.25 inches. So I'm just going to do my move. Let's see here. This one, multi-move, which is a V shortcut. I'm going to move the whole armhole. That way the armhole length stays the same. I'm just going to go minus 1.25. Perfect. And let me just mark that on there. We will come back to the armhole shape. Come back to that, sleeve length. Okay, so, all right, we may as well go ahead and do armhole shape now. So I think what I'm gonna do is just do an arc line, and then I will adjust across front and back once I make my back. So here's my arc tool. Where did it go? Every time I minimize the things, the little icons go in a different place. It's hard for me to find them. Where are you, arc tool? Oh, I think it's because I'm still in this. There it is. Okay, arc tool. And it's also shortcut A. I just wanted to show the icons for all of you so it's not confusing. All right, so in general with an armhole on a t-shirt, okay, on a woven, maybe you're gonna have a more pronounced armhole, or like an armhole that has a little more depth to it. Not quite like that, but if you look in a traditional pattern making book, your armholes are going to have more scoop, especially down in the lower section. That is not necessary with a t-shirt. In fact, I would strongly advise against it, because a t-shirt will expand as you sew it in this area, and then you'll get all that drapey goopiness right in your kind of like up lower armhole area. It'd be one thing if you wanted to have an armhole like that and then have darts and things to clean up around the armhole area, but because t-shirts don't have darts, you have to be really careful with your armholes so that you don't get an excess of fabric. So all that being said, I'm just gonna, I like to think of it like a teardrop shape kind of, and I will show you what that means when we do the back piece. I'm gonna do this here. Depth, yeah, that's all good. Cool. So there's my front, and I'm just gonna fill in the details for my front so you can see how it's done. So piece name, front, code, I'm gonna call this t-shirt pattern, and description, cut one self. Oh, self is down below. Self. And how many pieces per bundle? Just one. I think we're all good. The size, I do need to enter in sizes, so let's do that. Close. Okay, so now that's there. Grading, let's see here, sizes. All right, so I'm just gonna update this to be size medium, and then I'll specify 8 to 10, just so I don't forget. And then we will go back and do grading after we're done with this, but this is gonna be a whole project that we can do from start to finish together, and hopefully this is helpful, you know, to kind of see the process from beginning to end. All right, so now I'm gonna create my back, so I'm just gonna select this piece, Control C, Control V, There it is. Here's my back. I'm gonna label it so I don't forget. Back. Cool. Apply, close, there we go. All right, and now I need to make it actually look like a back, which I know it doesn't right now. All right, so let's start with back neck drop, and let's try to remember where I had the back neck drop. I think it was 1 inch and a, okay, yeah, it was 1.5 inches. Okay, so I'm gonna use this multi-tool. So 4 minus 1.5 inches is 2.5. So I'm just gonna do this and go 2.5. There we go. Okay, now I'm gonna use the arc tool to make it better. Where's my arc tool? Every time. Why can't I find you? There you are. Right here to there. And I'm gonna use my shift to just kind of, for a back neck drop, I'm really focused on the back being a nice right angle from here to there, and then having a nicely shaped scoop so it transitions to the front in a good way. There we go. Okay, and we will finesse that, but that's a good start. For my back armhole, I usually like to see the across back and then the across back, which is around here, and the across shoulder, a line in more of a straight line, because if you don't, then what it does is sort of like falls off the shoulder. It'll create a little bit of a weird shape. You can have it shaped like that, but it just sort of depends on the styling. For this t-shirt, I would not advise that. So here's my arc tool from here to there. And I'm gonna use, so this time I'm gonna make it sort of a more shallow depth. There we go. Cool. All right, so now I believe we still need to do sleeve, but we've done these. Oh, that's green. Cool. Green. All right, we're gonna measure across front and back, and we will get back to you about that. Let's play around with our shoulder slopes. So, and our armholes. So for a t-shirt, because we're working women's and we don't have the ability to dart out extra fabric, and to explain why the dart is necessary is if we as humans were just squares, then sure, we could be fit with squares of fabric, right? But the problem is that women have front fullness that they don't have in the back. So they need more fabric in the front chest area, and then they need less fabric in the armhole. So you kind of have to play with the pattern to get it. So, you know, you're never gonna make it perfectly clean unless you have a dart, but you can play with the pattern in order to sort of clean it up and kind of like finesse it in a way that just sort of makes it drape a little better. So the first way of doing that, you want to make this armhole length less than that armhole length. And there's a few ways of doing that. Number one is you can increase the front shoulder slope. So what that does is by increasing the shoulder slope, you're going to drop that down, and that makes this line overall less in length. So I'm going to just select that, and I'm going to go minus 0.25. Okay, cool. So now I made it a 1/4 inch shorter. The other thing that some people like to do can be controversial. Depends on if you feel comfortable sewing this on your fabric, all that stuff. You can add ease to the front bust area, and that way you'll have, you can make this armhole smaller than this one. So first I'm going to add a notch. I'm going to use my shortcut N for notch. There's my notch tool. And I'm going to click Alt, and I'm just going to do proportional 0.5. Because right now I haven't touched it, so it should give me a perfectly placed notch, right? Both are 7.379. Okay, now I'm going to use my multi-move tool, and I'm going to raise my front armhole a 1/4 inch. Cool. So now there's a 1/4 inch of ease from here to there, and this notch sort of holds it in a place, so that ease is going in the bust. To be honest, I don't know if it really matters that it's focused on the bust on a t-shirt. You know, this is not couture sewing, this is a t-shirt. But it could help to have some control there and make sure that you don't end up with all your E's right there, which would be less attractive. You probably won't notice it as much in your bust. Like if there is a slight puckering along the seam because of the E's, you wouldn't notice it right underneath the arm as much as you would lower down because your arm is there. So it's a better place to place it up by the bust. I actually might go 1/8 inch more, 0.125. Cool. So right now, my front armhole is now 5/8 smaller than my back. How am I going to compensate for that? So for one, a lot of times people, to bring their total armhole length back to spec, they will decrease the back shoulder slope. So you could go here and go 0.125. You know, it really depends on how it looks on the body as well. This is why developing a block that works for your fit model and your demographic and your fabric is really important, because shoulder slope, and this is what we're messing with right now, is pretty dependent on the body type that you're trying to fit for. So if you're a really athletic body type, you may need less slope. If you have a very busty model that you're trying to fit for, you might need more shoulder slope because you're trying to give more length right here and less length near the armhole. So it really depends on your body type. I'm gonna undo what I did just there. Oh wait, no, I want that. Yeah, I don't want I think this is good. So right now my back shoulder slope is 1/4 inch less and overall a bit bigger. So it's going to make my overall armhole a bit smaller, and I'm going to update the spec accordingly. But first I want to fit it on a model and see how it looks, and adjust from there. So yeah, if you did want to hit that 9 inches after I made these updates, so I took off 1/4 inch here, 3/8 there. Now I could lower both armholes 3/16. Wait, 5/8? I could lower them 5/16. So then that way overall it's going back to spec. So even though I decreased this one 5/8, I'm bringing both a little bit bigger so that they meet spec. Because really what we're doing right now is adjusting the ratio of front to back. And then when you adjust overall length, that's kind of a different thing. So, all right, so that is good. I don't love the armhole shape now, so I'm gonna play with that. Let's see here. Why isn't that? Where's my arc? There we go. Okay. And what I'm actually going to do is see how these align. This is one of the big things as a pattern maker you need to get really used to, which is looking at your pattern transition seams and adjusting for it. Before I do that, I'm going to do something here to the front piece. So I already know, see how I have this straight across hem? Well, the human body, again, is not a straight form. And in the front, we actually have more length, right? So, well, on a female body, you have more length in particular. So you have more curves to get over in the front compared to the back, which means that you actually need more length in the front compared to the back in order to compensate, in order for it to look even on the body. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a point, and usually I like that point to be, whoops. So let's say here's about 1 inch down from your armhole and out about right here. This is around where your apex is. So straight down from that apex, I'm going to add a point, and I'm going to add another point. And here's what I'm going to do with that. So I'm going to move this part down 1/2 inch. Oops, 0.5. Not 5, that would be too much. Okay, so now I moved that down 0.5, and then I'm going to move point, which is Q, and just kind of finesse it. You want this transition to be good. You just want to make sure that all your transitions look good so that, whoops, if you don't exactly select the point, it will create another one for you. I don't love that these are grading points, so I'm just gonna go ahead and remove the grading because I just want one long curve. Cool. All right, and So when we're talking transitions, now I'm going to flip this piece. And I'm going to rotate it. Whoops. Okay, if you select the point that you want to rotate around first, and then select rotate piece. Uh-oh. Select the point, rotate piece, now select the reference. There we go. Now we can kind of like get it right there. Perfect. All right, so what we're looking for when we're looking here is we want to make sure that these transitions are really smooth. So let's say I had kind of come up a lot. No, we don't want that. We don't want anything to come to a point that's going to be pretty. It's a big pattern making no-no. You want everything to be a nice, smooth, and beautiful curve. I feel like I'm having trouble getting it to do exactly what I want it to do, but that's pretty close. All right, that looks okay. And then I'm going to move this so you can see the armhole. So now you kind of see what I mean by that teardrop shape. This could be slightly improved. I don't like, it's coming to a slight point here. I'll be honest, in sewing, it probably won't come to a point because this is going to get stretched out. So everything you see here is going to get wider and more curvy shaped. So this is probably okay. Although if I was being really nitpicky, I could kind of just go in here and make sure that that is a nice smooth shape there. All right, so now that we have that, I'm gonna measure my across front and across back. Whoops. Uh-oh. What happened? Okay. Let's reorient, rotate to grain line. Cool. So I'm gonna measure across front and across back and just see how they look. I'm gonna do that by making an internal line. So the internal line, I'm using the draft function, and this isn't the true high point shoulder, but this will be close enough for now. And we can talk about true high point shoulder in the future. So I'm gonna make this 0 and I'm gonna make this 5. Cool. 5 might be a little high. You know, it doesn't really matter. This is just a point to reference. You could make it 5.5 or 6. I feel like 6 is more typical in men's, maybe 5.5 for women's, or 5. But again, it's totally arbitrary and just up to personal preference. Cool. So now I'm going to measure basically from here to there. My Y measurement is basically 14.5, so it's a little less than the 15 that we wanted. And here, that is pretty close to the 14 that we wanted. So the across back is shy by ½ inch. All right, so rather than over obsess about my across back, I'm just going to adjust it to be 14.5 and front, that's looking good. We can come back to these after we look at it on the form in Clo, but that at least gives us a good start. So now we can move on to the sleeve. So let's see how this sleeve is looking here. So we wanted our bicep to be 7 inches, oh no, sleeve length from shoulder is 7, bicep 6.25. All right, so I'll show you how to make a sleeve. I use this polygon tool. So I'm gonna call this sleeve and diameter. So I want 0.5, that's good. Perimeter, diameter. Okay. I'm just gonna adjust from here. You know what? I don't like that. I'm gonna delete this and try with a rectangle. I think that'll be a bit easier. So I'm gonna call this sleeve. So this way it's gonna be 7 inches from shoulder, and this way I said 6.25, so 12.5. Cool. So there's my sleeve, 12.5, and there's the 7. All right, so here is what's gonna happen. First, I'm gonna add a point to the top of my sleeve. Here we go, right there. That way I can move my sleeve inseam down. All right, and then of course I'm gonna have to make it match my armhole, so that's gonna be a whole thing. That is the fun of sleeves. So I'm going to first adjust my, I wonder if there's a way, I guess I have to do this separately. All right, so I'm gonna make my sleeve cap height 5 1/4, maybe 5 1/2, 5 minus 5.25, cool. Minus 5.25. So there's my cap height. And then I'm going to reduce my sleeve opening. I know I said, let's say here 6, 11 3/4 is what I want, but it's 3/8 off of the biceps. So minus 0.375, here we go, 0.375, cool. So now it's 5 7/8 on the half. So I'm just going to press save, yes, and then I can go in here and adjust this a little more. Sleeve, this is my t-shirt pattern, and if you can't remember what you called it, there you go. And then description, cut 2, self, how many are there? There's going to be 2, and opposite piece there is going to be, so it flips once. Cool. Close, there we go. All right, so off from the start, I can see that this is going to be a problem. My sleeve cap is a lot smaller than my armhole. So we can see this is 10, and this is 9 and 5/8, and these are both 8. So that's quite a bit smaller. We have a few options we can do here. I think I'm just going to raise my body armhole, and then because the problem is the only way to really get more, well, once I add the curve, it'll increase the length. But the only other way is to add cap height. I don't know how much. I could make it 5 1/2, and maybe I'll start by doing that. So I'll make this 0.25, and then I'm gonna adjust my curves. So I'll do here to there. So here's one curve, cool. And then here to there. Here's my other curve, cool. Save, and then I'm going to remove the grading point so I can see that a little more clearly. All right, so I'm looking at 9 and 8. I know I haven't specified front and back yet, which is fine, but right now these are still a lot bigger. All right, let's work on which one's going to be front and back. So I'm gonna make this my back. For whatever reason, I always make the top part my back. Everyone has an orientation that they're most comfortable with. That's what it is for me. So I'm gonna say this is the back, and I'm just gonna label it because I might have to move around my notches and I don't want to get confused. Cool. Great. That way I won't get confused. So one thing, and it really depends on your form and what you're trying to fit to, most people will say sleeves should fold symmetrically, unless for some reason there's an asymmetrical detail to your arm. And I could make some argument for that. I think that depending on your body type, a lot of like more athletic body types might have more fullness in their back arm, kind of you build up muscles there, sort of like underneath your shoulder blade. So in that case, maybe you want this back armhole to come out and have a little more reach. And if that's the case, maybe you want the sleeve to do that too. So it's not a straightforward answer, but I would say start with symmetry and then you can adjust as needed once you figure out your body type and everything you need. So I'm gonna fold this piece, and it's been a while since I folded. How do I do that? 1 second. Okay, I remembered. It's fold. It's this one. Fold in. Okay, so I can't remember exactly how it works. Nope. So I think if I press Alt, it'll fold to point. There we go. All right, so you can see my sleeve. It's a little funky. I'm just gonna start by moving things as I know I need to. Like this is a weird lump there. Often I will say, most people will say sleeves should be a little bit flatter in the back and a little bit more curvy in the front, more full. And the reason for that is basically because of the way the pattern is shaped. So you have more of a scoop here and it's more flat here. So you wouldn't want this to be more full because then you just have like an excess of fabric. So it's sort of matching what you're doing with your armholes. If you have a really scoopy back armhole, then you're probably going to need more fullness in the back. In addition, if you have someone who's super muscular and maybe has a strong projection out from their actual arm at the top of their arm, then maybe you do want more of a curve. So really it's not a strong rule per se, but it's kind of dependent on your body and what you're going for. One thing I will say that is helpful to keep in mind is you want this part here to be a nice right angle so it transitions well. So the way we can check that is by, let's see here, how do I rotate? Rotate to horizontal. There we go. Cool. So now I can kind of adjust that. Now I'm going to do the same thing. This shortcut, oh, I don't know if it has a shortcut. So I'm going to select that line and then rotate to horizontal. Cool. And then Q is my shortcut for move points. I'm one of those old-fashioned girls. I love to just move one point at a time. I really like control. Like the armhole, if it's not a perfect right angle, that's okay because again, this is going to be a little bit stretched out. But generally speaking, when we talk about sleeves, that is your goal, is to have this be a really nice transition. So when this seam aligns with this seam, it's a nice shape and it's not coming to a point. Okay, so I think that's good. So now I can rotate that back. I'm just going to move this point a little bit more. All right, so this to me is looking pretty good as a sleeve. Let's check it again. So I'm going to press Alt. Let's see here, fold in. It's this one. Alt. All right, cool. So often, this actually looks great. I'm very impressed with myself. When you talk to people often, you'll see that you want a standard rule of thumb, but of course, take it with a grain of salt. You want to see this distance here be about 3/8, which, wow, I really mastered that, just eyeballing it. I've been doing this a while. And this here may be about 1/4. It's only 1/8, but that's all right. And of course, the reason there is when you think about it, your across front is about an inch smaller than your across back. So this scoop, it's like you have that extra 3/8, ½ inch pulling to the front, if that makes sense. Okay, so now I'm gonna open that up. So we're looking good there. I'm gonna remove the, well, here's the next part. We need it to match. So this is gonna be a problem. So I'm going to remove the grading point there. And now we're going to have to deal with what's happening. So I'm going to use the measurement chart. View report. There is no measurements. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Hold on 1 minute. I can't remember how I do that. Okay, I remember now. So I can set it to measure things. So I'm going to call this the back armhole. And basically the gist is you want to say measure and then it's been a while since I did this, so I might have to think that through. Quantity 1, if it's on the mirror, half. Okay. Cool. And then here I'm going to do this 2. Except I'm going to call it front armhole. I can talk more about how to use the measurement chart in the future. I'm a little rusty because I haven't done this in a bit. And I'm just going to call it sleeve cap, measure quantity 1. And the reason I wrote quantity 1 here and half here is because these are mirrored lines. So if I didn't say half, it would measure both this one and the other side. Ooh, that's kind of a weird shape, isn't it? I do not like that. Okay. And then I might even get rid of that point. There we go. Fewer points is always better in my mind. The fewest points you can have on your pattern is the best way to do it. Keep it clean. Sometimes if you have duplicate points or points that are really close to each other, they cause some errors in the system. So always best to just kind of like make sure you don't have duplications. All right, we're still on the sleeve, but we do need to do neckline. All right, so now that I measured that, I'm just going to show you the measurement chart, report measurements. So here we go. So here's back armhole, front armhole, sleeve cap. Let me do a total. I'm going to do this again and just call it armhole measurement half. Okay, and then here I'm going to do the same. Armhole, nope. And that will group them together. Press save, report measurements. Here we go, armhole. And it will break it down for you. So my armhole is almost 2 inches bigger than my sleeve cap, or it is 2 inches bigger than my sleeve cap, so I'm gonna have to adjust for that. All right, guys, well, I realize this video is already 45 minutes long, so I'm gonna stop here. Next episode, or next video, we call it episode, we are going to tackle how to get this sleeve cap fit into this armhole, which probably will just mean I'm gonna raise the armhole an inch, and then I'll have to update the graded spec. And then also I'm gonna do the neckline and the neck banding, and then we will bring that into Clo and cross-check fit and compare it to our graded spec page. So when I'm finished here, I will be selling the graded spec page, the DXF and Tukatech files here, and also the Clo file in case any of you want to join me, experiment, use it for a block for yourself, whatever you want to do. And then after that, I'm also going to do some grading, and I will sell that as well. So if you have any requests, of course, please leave me a comment below. Any questions, I would love to answer them. And if you'd like to support me on Patreon, I will leave my link down below. If you would like to purchase anything, I will also leave my link to my Etsy website or my Etsy store down below as well. And if you're enjoying these, please do me a favor, share them with your pattern making friends, like, subscribe. I know it's silly, but it does really help. And yeah, I love to keep making these videos, so please help me out and do that if you are enjoying them. All right, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.